The first question is going to be, I think it was something like, what do you think about 30 minutes of conditioning during baseball practice? My thoughts on conditioning when it comes to baseball. If you're having your baseball players run long distance for conditioning, my question to you is, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get them in better shape? I mean, running long distance really does nothing for a baseball player. Do you have to be in cardiovascular shape to be a baseball player? The answer is no.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Being in cardiovascular shape does not translate over to baseball. It just doesn't. And that goes for being a pitcher too. You will never ever see a pitcher sucking wind on the pitcher's mound. If they're getting tired, their muscles aren't in condition, which has nothing to do with running, nothing. You could run 20 miles a day for a year and you will still get tired on the mound if you're not in condition to throw a baseball. Running does not make you in condition to throw a baseball. It does not. Strength training gets you in condition and throwing gets you in condition. That's what puts you in condition for baseball. If you want to get in better condition as a basketball player, you actually play basketball. How many guys in basketball are injured and do nothing but condition to get ready to play, but then they play in their first game and they're not in basketball shape because they're not in condition to play basketball? The game situation is much different. That goes the same for baseball and for pitching. Running does not get you in shape for baseball. Stop wasting your time on conditioning and running poles and running distances and running through. I had a kid telling me that they ran a 300-yard shuttle for baseball. Why? Why? What does that do for you in baseball? I'm going to answer that. It does nothing. It does nothing.
You'll get nothing and like it.
90% of baseball players will never run more than 180 feet at any point in a game, ever. Ever. That's why the 60-yard dash as a metric in combines and scouting things makes no sense. You never run 60 yards in a game, ever. If you get an inside the park home run, maybe you'll run that far. But how many times does that happen in a year with all the teams combined? Rarely, if ever. Everything is short, quick bursts. So why would you train long distance when you never do that in a game? I wish coaches would catch up with reality and stop doing old school stuff that doesn't help develop their players. A lot of times coaches use this tactic just to show dominance and control and to make guys suffer or for punishment. If you want to do it for punishment, that's up to you. But to do it for development and try and make your team better, that's just insane. A real simple way to do sprints for conditioning in baseball is 10 5s, 5 10s, 5 20s, 5 30s, 5 10s, and call it a day. Long rest periods. Make sure each guy is 100% recovered before the next sprint. Do that instead of distance conditioning, and you would see a big difference in your players. That's my 2 cents for that one. What do you think about back squatting for baseball players? So let me first start off by saying I don't think back squatting is a bad exercise. I actually like back squatting, but
Hybriders only, baby. Come through, check my boy Kevin out all day.
But when it comes to baseball players, I am completely against back squatting. Not because it's a bad exercise, but because the risk reward for back squatting is something that I don't want to take on for my players. Let's think about it logically. A lot of these guys are crazy strong. So why would I want to risk putting upwards of 300 to 500 pounds on your shoulder,
compressing the spine with that much weight and potentially getting into a bad position at the bottom that can injure them long term and injure them short term. I've had some pro guys in the gym for the last 2 years that have never put a bar on their back when it comes to back squatting. You can use goblet squats, rear foot elevated split squats, front squats, lateral lunges, landmine front squats, trap bar squats, and about 10 other ways to accomplish the same thing from a back squat that you can do safer with less risk. To put it mildly, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Not to mention, baseball is a unilateral sport, meaning you use one leg. At a time. You rarely, if ever, use 2 feet at the same time. So training that way isn't always the best way to get the job done. Quite honestly, the only thing we do bilaterally is deadlift, and that is because it is the best way to mimic force production into the ground. That was a really good question. I love that question. That was a really good question. I love that question only because I get it all the time. I do love squat variations because the lower half is the engine, but they're also the brakes when it comes to throwing velocity, throwing hard. If you don't have a good lower half, you're not going to be able to put out force, and you're definitely not going to be able to accept the force that your body puts out when you're throwing at a high velocity. So squatting is important, but back squatting is just personally something that I prefer not to do whatsoever. Those were the long form questions I chose to answer this week. There's still a bunch that I picked out that were sent to me that I'm gonna answer here right now. What happens is some of the questions I can answer in an Instagram story in like 10 or 15 seconds. Some of them require much more thought and a lot more to the answer than just a 10 or 15 second response. So those questions I choose to elaborate on, go into more detail with, but the ones here, we still have about 5 more questions. I'm gonna answer now at the end of every segment, the short version ones. Some of them are silly sometimes, some of them are just real quick, and I'm just gonna answer these now. Okay, the first one is, what is one thing you could change about baseball culture? Well, that's easy. Travel baseball, year-round baseball. I wish they would go away with that. I wish parents would stop thinking that year-round baseball is something that a kid needs to do to be a better player. It's just not the case. All really good baseball players, from here anyways, are multi-sport athletes. And if that's not going to be the case, I think kids should at least train year-round and not necessarily play baseball year-round. Why is it necessary in Arizona for you to play year-round, but if you lived in Chicago, you can't play year-round? The players aren't any better here than they are there. The good players there are still good. The good players here are still good. Playing year-round doesn't make a bit of difference. Okay, the next one is going to be, what is the biggest component of off-season programming? Strength, throwing, or hitting? Well, I think sometimes you guys ask the questions that you know what my answer is going to be. Obviously it's strength. Throwing and hitting, obviously important in baseball, but in an off-season, not so important. Not so important at all. If you didn't strength train all off season and all you did was hit and throw, the chances of you getting even 5% better is very, very slim. If you train hard, get stronger, get bigger, work on your mobility and recovery stuff, you could get 30-40% better. You have to do your strength with your baseball stuff, but just doing baseball stuff is not going to make you a tremendous amount better. Okay, let's check out the next one. What made you want to get into fitness and open up your own facility? Well, a little backstory with me is I played arena football for seven-ish years, And if you know anything about arena football, it's like minor league baseball. You don't get paid anything. I mean, nothing. You barely make minimum wage, and it's just something that you can't live off of, really. So what I would do in the off season is start training guys. And this started back in college. I can remember back at one of the schools I went to in South Dakota that I had a group of guys that we were playing baseball with. Training in baseball wasn't even really involved yet. It was before the McGuire and Sosa boom with guys getting all big and stuff. And even to go back to my junior college, I was training for football and playing baseball. I used to have to sneak into the weight room and train because we weren't allowed to lift weights. We were told it was going to make you big and bulky and tight, and we weren't allowed to use weights. So I had to pretend, or I had to fake that I wasn't doing it when I really was doing it. But anyway, when it comes to me wanting to open my own facility, I just started training guys in the off season as a way to make more money, and it just kept going and going from there. My first real job as a trainer was at Lifetime Fitness in Orland Park, Illinois, outside of Chicago. It was probably 22 years ago, I'd say. Yeah, 22 years ago. I think I was 25. That was my first real job as a trainer. And then I left there, and I've been legitimately doing my own thing ever since. There's no money. You're not going to make any money as a trainer. You're just not going to. There's only so many hours in the day that you can train somebody one-on-one, and you can cap out at what you can charge. Unless you charge so much money that only certain people can afford you, and then when shit hits the fan and people need to cut costs, the first thing that's going is you. So it's not a really great way to make a living. The only way to do it is to open your own gym, and the only way to do it and get a good living out of it is to own multiple gyms. It's really hard to own your own gym and make good money. I'm here to tell you that. So with playing arena football and needing to make more money, I also took my love for training, tried to make a job out of it. That grew into being a trainer, which grew into me wanting to own my own facility. And maybe I'll do a whole vlog on or an episode on basically how I got from back at Lifetime to where I am now with this gym. But short of it is I needed to start training to make money. I thought I was pretty good at it. It was a skill set that I really liked, and the only way to make a living out of being a trainer eventually is to own your own facility. So that's how that ended up happening. All right, last question is, what is one exercise you would recommend for a pitcher to be more explosive? I mean, gun to my head, one exercise. If I had one exercise that I could only do and that was it, it would 1000% be deadlifts. I almost said squats, and that's completely untrue, but it is deadlifts. Deadlifts is the best bang for your buck out of any lift that you can do. It incorporates the most muscle groups. It promotes so much more explosiveness than anything else. People would argue that cleans maybe promote more explosiveness, which they might be right, but the learning curve for cleans is enormous. It is enormous, which is why we don't do them in here. It's such a hard thing to teach correctly. It takes a very long time to be good at it, so we just don't do it. There's so many different variations. You could split stance, you could do elevated feet deadlifts to incorporate more of a squat. RDL deadlifts, you can go super light and go fast for speed. You can use bands. There's just so much you could do with a deadlift. If I had one go-to, that would be it. Plain, simple, easy. Get it done, get out the door. Thank you so much for the questions. I am very grateful for anybody that decides to take their time out, ask a question, watch a video, share it, whatever. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, go check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification. Those two things right there help me more than anything else that you can really do. Be sure to send us more questions. I'll get to them in the next episode. Live at Bats drops in a day. Check those out. It was awesome. We got a lot of really great arms out there. There's some cool stuff coming through the pipeline. Stay tuned for that. That's all I got for you. No sponsors still. That's it for this episode of Ask KBay. Until next time, see ya.
That's what she said.